Hey there, Facebook. It is Vanessa here again, your motivational speaker, trainer, and head coach from Live, Love, Give. And today's message is one that has absolutely been triggered. And it's a funny thing that I'm talking about being triggered because that's really what it's all about. But I actually came across a very old journal of mine that I thought, oh, this is interesting. You know, when you find an old journal and you're like, wonder what was going on in my life back then. And I'm glad I dove into it because I found some pretty interesting stuff. And it reminded me of a bunch of things that I thought I'd love to share with you guys. And so ultimately today's message is all about the fact that you will absolutely hit the emotional intelligence jackpot if you go down the rabbit hole and decipher like why you get triggered. You know, and when I talk about triggers, I'm talking about being really irrational. And what this part of my journaling that I wrote a number of years ago, about 3 or so years ago, I think it was, and I you know, it was pages and pages. I had this big A4 journal that I used to journal in every single day, and I read like 4 or so pages was just like this emotional outpour, and I was like, I wonder what that was about. I'm going to read it, and I read it, and I was like, whoa, okay, so. That's what inspired me for today's message, and I want you guys thinking, as I share my personal story with you, I want you guys to think about what are those kind of irrational triggers that you have going on in your life. And so what this particular journal entry was all about was it was the day after Valentine's Day, and I was in a long-term relationship at the time, and you know, my partner and I, you know, were away somewhere beautiful, and we'd had a great Valentine's Day. Well, we'd attempted to have a really great Valentine's Day, but things sort of came up during that evening, and it left me the following day sitting alone in a cafe by myself, doing all this journaling. And so what I was journaling about was this feeling of irrationality, of non-logic, and I felt like I was super triggered by behavior of my partner that I felt was just like totally irrational, that I would be upset about, but I couldn't help it. And so I needed to get to the bottom of it at this time, and it took me on this long journaling process, which was originally the original trigger that got me journaling and that was creating this disharmony and disconnection in my relationship, was around the pattern of behavior of my partner drinking. And why it felt so irrational was that he wasn't even drunk, right? But I was finding myself being really triggered by his drinking and his behavior when it wasn't even really that bad. And in actual fact, I didn't mind a drink myself. But what I want to dive into is why it was so triggering and what I sort of came up with. And so as I journaled and I was asking myself, why is it that I'm experiencing these judgmental feelings? I'm feeling you know, kind of really like I'm losing attraction for this person. I'm feeling kind of disgusted. It seems illogical and irrational that I would feel this way because my partner had a few drinks, right? Like that's kind of a bit crazy, right? So I was trying to get to the bottom of it because I was having some pretty big, you know, shifts and changes to the point where I was like, don't know if I'm even attracted to this person. I'm kind of questioning my future with this person, right? So it was that kind of big in my mind. And as I was journaling, because I'm somebody who, particularly my past self, who was starting to build self-awareness, I needed to get it out into the external world in order to make sense of it, right? So journaling was a massive practice of mine. I still journal, but now it's more in the form of writing, and that's why you guys see my posts every day. They're actually, my writing is part of my journaling and self-reflection, and then I get it out to the world. But at the time, journaling, word for word, my emotional experience was my everything in terms of self-awareness. And as I went on this journey through these pages, I started to put different things together. I started to reflect back firstly on my past relationships and my 2 previous long-term relationships prior to the one that I'm talking about now, which is also an old relationship, an ex-relationship. But I had realized, I put it together, that both of them had a scenario happen that was kind of like the nail in the coffin for me to want to leave that relationship. And it all stemmed from them having a drink. And none of them were big drinkers at all. You know, it was kind of a rare occasion for them to like have a few drinks. But at these different times, I found myself completely being like, this person is not for me. You know, like this is the kind of nail in the coffin. This is the last piece. I don't want to be here anymore, right? And so I realized within myself that I'd left relationships with this drinking behavior being like the nail in the coffin, and it was totally irrational, illogical, partly because I enjoyed a drink for connection myself, right? So I kept going on this journey. Okay, this is playing out. This is a massive pattern in my life. What is at the bottom of it? Then I started having some ahas. So then I started realizing, what is my relationship with alcohol? You know, what and relationship. And then I started putting two and two together, and the fact that, you know, I didn't have the experience myself, but I heard both of my parents communicate to me about how both of their fathers had been alcoholics, and the perception of the stories that I'd heard, they'd ruined their families' lives in a lot of ways, you know, in differing ways, maybe some abusive ways, some abandonment ways, some withdrawing ways, but at the end of the tunnel. And that's probably why my brothers and I, you know, we're not big drinkers. Like we enjoy having a drink every now and then, but we're just not big drinkers. And maybe this had an influence over that as well. But hearing those stories, and my parents, like, they just don't drink. It's pretty rare for them to drink either, you know, and it's funny how these scenarios that happened generations back can so impact our patterns of behavior and the underlying subconscious beliefs that we generate that can be determining huge, massive pieces of our lives. So what it came down to was that I had attached this drinking behavior, which I wondered, you know, and I was only having this conversation just a couple of days ago with my brother actually, about like, why is it that like it's an everyday people, we have like such open-mindedness, but then if it comes down to an intimate partner, why can we get kind of like, we have these rules and regulations, right, about how they should behave and what turns us off. And what I discovered through this journaling process a few years ago when I was in this moment of realization and revelation was that ultimately I had equated, you know, I saw these, my grandfathers, you know, looking at their partners as more so of a burden in their lives than that person that they loved and cherished and adored. And coupled with what I came down to, this kind of lack of self-respect and an inability to really find and focus on what the challenge is in their life. They weren't happy in their lives, but instead of finding what's going wrong, what am I going to do to break through and move forward, it came down to, how am I going to distract myself? What is going to be my tranquilizer of choice, right? And so at this flashback to this kind of present time a few years ago for my past self doing all this journaling, you know, my partner had expressed that he wasn't happy with the way our business was going. He had all these fears and doubts. He had expected himself to be in a better position in his life at the age that he was. All of these different things, coupled with then I see him drinking away his sorrows in a way. It triggered me like to past to go back into the past and see, where have I seen this before, or where have I thought I've seen this before, you know, my perception of other people's stories, and project it into my future as to the kind of life I'd be living with this person who can't face their problems. They just want to distract themselves. And, you know, that's the kind of relationship that we're going to have, is this like this. I was terrified because I was feeling like my life with this person was going to be so restricted. It was going to be just settling for the mundane, for the mediocre. It wasn't going to be reaching for our highest potential. It wasn't going to be stepping into courage and breaking through our challenges and supporting and encouraging each other to do that and be real instead of avoiding problems, And so I was absolutely in this state of terror. And so coming up with that realization, like, whoa, like that shifted and changed a lot for me in my own self-awareness. And instead of throwing in the towel and being disgusted and turned off and being like, well, see you later, and through irrationality of just seeing somebody drink, like, come on, right? And so from that point, I was able to get such clarity and self-awareness to not make it his problem, to actually identify and face my own issues and challenges and all that's going on in my own subconscious that I was projecting onto him. And then we were able to have a conversation. Turns out, cut the story short, that relationship did end up ending a couple of years later. And to be honest, it probably ended because of what I was so fearful of, which was, not growing past the challenges and instead distracting instead of moving through and growing and being real and identifying what that is, right? So that's why I want to bring today's message to you. And I've called it the fact that, you'll hit the emotional intelligence jackpot when you go down the rabbit hole of your irrational triggers, because your triggers are fears, right? And your fears, the more irrational and illogical they are, the more there's value to be identified and had. There's more gold to be mined in our fears. So we have to shine light on them. We have to go down that path. Like, why is this such a trigger? Why am I so fearful? I was absolutely in a state of terror as I was writing out this journaling, all based on seeing my partner drink because after he'd expressed some challenges and unfulfillment in his life, right? So we have to identify, we have to go down that rabbit hole. And my challenge for you guys out there is to identify, what are you currently getting triggered by? What is a massive trigger in your life that is kind of irrational? And a great place is always our intimate relationships. It's where we can tend to get triggered the absolute most. And so identify, what is it? What is that irrational trigger that I have? And go down the path of building self-awareness to identify what that means to you so that you can actually get that self-awareness and stop that irrationality from dictating the course of your life, and actually get more attuned to what you value, what matters most, so that you can move in that direction as opposed to in the direction of your fears and subconscious and feeling kind of out of control with your illogical and irrational sort of ways of sort of being. So I really hope that this was valuable. I really hope that me sharing so openly about some past journaling that I just sort of read through and was kind of like, whoa, this is kind of cool. I hope that it's been valuable sharing that with you guys, and I'd love to hear from you. So if you have any comments or feedback or questions that you want to ask or share right here, definitely do it right now so that I can jump into the chat room and definitely engage with you guys. And before I jump in and see who's been able to join me and get to any questions, I absolutely want to make sure that each and every one of you guys is currently a part of the Limitless Potential Inner Circle Facebook community. If you want to be surrounded by awesome, amazing like minds who are absolutely on their growth journey, they're reaching new levels of their potential, they want to support, encourage, and challenge you to do the same. If you want to be surrounded by people like that, make sure that you click on the link above, request to join, and I will definitely approve you into that community. And let's check in and see who's here. So I've got Jason and Jace and Judy and Aaron and Parget and Ricardo and Tina and Savula and Elf and Alexandria and Amy. Awesome to see you. And Alexandria, thrilled I can join you live. Absolutely. I'm doing it a little bit earlier to check out whether this is a better time for you guys. So let me know what, all my regulars who all love to show up, and I love seeing you guys here each and every day. I'd love to hear from you about your best times because I want to make it so that we can engage each and every day. So I'd love that, or whenever possible, obviously. And Jared's here, awesome. And Jan and Maggie and Ayla. Oh, thank you so much for those kind words there, Ayla. You're great too. I love you being here. And Catherine and David and Helen and Jared and Kylie and Tina and Eduardo and Tristan. Awesome to see you guys. And Graham, I feel you on this. I seem to have an issue with drink too. I don't see why people need to, and at times hate it when my partner drinks. Yeah, so Graham, you know what? Like, I like you, I'm sure, you know, value open-mindedness, and nobody likes to feel that feeling of like judgment. You know, it just doesn't feel good on either side. And so I love that you're resonating with today's message, Graham, and I would definitely ask you to go on your own self-discovery journey with that. Do a little bit of journaling. Why does it sort of trigger you so much, particularly when your partner drinks? You know, like for me, it was always kind of this like self-respect thing, and then kind of like my fear was, are you using that to distract yourself from an unfulfilling life? You know, because my perception is, you know, when everything is going amazingly well in your life, you don't need anything to sort of magnify it or distract you from it. It's just like brilliant, you know, but that's my model of the world. It's not everybody's. So we need to get to the bottom of why we're so triggered by other people's behavior. And then we need to get curious about that other person and why they do what they do, because they do things that they do for totally different reasons than we would do them. So particularly if there's somebody that you want in your life, we need to have that curiosity as well as self-awareness. So I love that, Graham. Thanks so much for sharing. And I've got Craig and Alonia and Lynn. Awesome to see you guys. And Aaron, great story. Ironically, you were describing something similar to the 4th step in the 12-step program, the method alcoholics use to clean up the past. Wow, that's so interesting. I don't know anything about the 12-step program, but I absolutely love that that was part of it. That's so cool. And thanks so much for sharing, Aaron, and for being here. You are super appreciated, as you know, I hope. And Charlotte's here, and Ram, and Kuno, awesome. And Bassam, and Chris, and Renee, and Aaron, so true. Take the time to figure it out. On of my trigger is asking for help. Yes. Definitely. Yeah, I love that. So asking your trigger, like what, you know, asking it for help to get better levels of self-awareness, and definitely figure it out. Anything that triggers you, particularly if it's super irrational or illogical, like guaranteed you got some weird stuff going on in there that you really want to shine light on so that you can have a new level of self-awareness, which is ultimately going to get you to a higher level of your potential. And emotional intelligence is everything. So definitely Aaron and Shahid and John and Aiden and Julie and Safan and Tony and William and Jan. Teamwork, communication on many levels, and faith. The journal is a great way to get things out to yourself. Absolutely. It's like starting a conversation, a dialogue between yourself, you know, and kind of like the subconscious and the conscious, bringing them back into alignment. That's why journaling is so super awesome. I love that, Jon. Thank you. And much love to you, Fit Chris. Thank you. And Angie's here, and Jed. Awesome, guys. Well, I really hope that today's message has inspired you to go hunt down that rabbit hole to all of your triggers. You know, identify what's a major trigger in my life that is pretty irrational. If I really think about it, it's a little bit irrational here. And go on that journey, go down the rabbit hole, do some journaling, and I guarantee you will hit the emotional intelligence jackpot if you have the courage to face your fears, shine light on them, and definitely bring them to the surface so that they no longer control you. And like I said, you can align that subconscious, all those limiting fears and all those triggers that are getting, you know, brought to the surface with your conscious, more self-aware and intentional mind. And for MD and Caroline, I hope you guys catch a recording and get a ton of value from today's message. I am absolutely, as always, sending you all of my love, light, blessings, gratitude, energy, enthusiasm, everything extraordinary coming to you to wherever you are in the world today. I hope it's amazing and brilliant and beautiful. And I'm just about to head out and hit up another F45 training session. They are super fun and I'm really enjoying them. And if you guys haven't tried F45, I think you should definitely check it out. There'll probably be one in the city near you. You can do a free trial of it, test it out. It's super fun. And yeah, if you want to like really push your body past its current limits, that's what I'm finding with this training. It's super, super awesome. That's why I just wanted to throw that on the end there. And you're super welcome, Tristan. Thank you for being here. And I'm sending you all my love, guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow.